When John, Paul, George and Ringo arrived in New York's Kennedy Airport in February 1964, they were met by 3,000 screaming teenagers. Beatlemania had officially crossed the Atlantic. The Beatles was started by British teenagers John Lennon and Paul McCartney and grew to include George Harrison and Ringo Starr. Their first single, Love Me Do, went to number 17 on the British charts, and the second, Please Please Me, shot to number 2. Beatlemania took hold of Britain after women saw the mop-haired quartet perform on television for the first time. The adulation and mass hysteria they inspired became a global phenomenon.
Have you ever been in physical danger from your fans?
Well, occasionally, yes. Only when there's been a big mob, you know, a really big one. But usually they're quite nice if there's only a few at a time when you meet them. Yeah.
Performances in Paris at the Olympia weren't met by quite the hysteria they were used to. But the Fab Four weren't complaining. Their debut US album, Meet the Beatles, had hit number 1 on the Billboard chart and stayed there for 11 weeks.
They're funny, you see. There were more boys than girls, and we missed the good old screams. But, you know, there were quite a lot of shouts, but...
You mean they actually listen to you? That's the difference, is it?
Yeah.
The publicity machine kicked into top gear, and soon the boys couldn't visit a sweet shop without being mobbed. Sometimes their concerts provoked full-scale riots. They even met royalty. But through it all, the lads stayed irreverent, funny, and down to earth. Many commentators dismissed them as a teenage fad, but the Lennon-McCartney songwriting collaboration proved to be musical gold. Just 3 years after the release of their first single, the Beatles were appointed members of the British Empire.
They were sent from the Prime Minister at Downing Street to our manager's office, and they were delivered from there to Twickenham, where we were filming. The day later, we just found them, and we thought we were being called up to the army. And then we opened them, and we found out we weren't.
Despite Britain's crippling tax laws, the Beatles were well on their way to becoming very wealthy men, something they were happy to send up in a news interview when they returned from their US tour.
I hear anyway that the 4 of you are going to be millionaires by the end of the year.
That's nice.
Have you had time to actually spend this money?
What money? He said.
Doesn't he give any to you?
No. You seen that car of his?
As the 60s wore on, the fresh-faced, humorous Liverpudlian lads changed their image and started sporting long locks, facial hair and jewelry. Their music became darker and more complex, and Eastern mysticism played a major influence. Cracks began to appear in the group, resulting from drug use and creative differences. Finally, John's involvement with artist Yoko Ono set the stage for the end of the Beatles.
I mean, we have a laugh. We think it's funny that the front page news should be the fact that 2 people went to bed on their honeymoon. We see the funny side of it. And that in Vienna, which is a pretty square place, there's all these beautiful photographs of microphones being held to a bag, you know, to wait for the bag to speak.
It's rather nice, yeah.
But we're serious about the peace bit, you know. And but as we said here in Amsterdam, the laughs, if we make people laugh, that's enough, you know.
John and Yoko devoted themselves to convincing people to give peace a chance, and all 4 Beatles launched themselves as solo artists. In 1971, the Beatles officially disbanded.